There is nothing like this in the state of Tennessee, and Nashville itself, being so interconnected through all the highways, is about 2,500 lots short. So we're building the first luxury motor coach resort in the state of Tennessee. It is going to be a 22 to 25-minute drive west of the center of Nashville, and it has 260 luxury motor coach lots. You can buy one, bring your Class A or Super C luxury motor coach in, and when you're not there, you can bring it back to the HOA and do a 70-30 split in the rental program.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Land Development Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Glick. Today, I'm excited to have with me Will Barron. Will is the founder, president, and co owner at Providence Builder Group based out of the Nashville area. Will, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Ryan. I appreciate. I'm excited to be here, and um, you know, every time I have the opportunity to do a podcast, it allows us as a company and me as a co-owner to kind of express what we're excited about and what we're working on right now, among many other things.
Well, cool. We got a lot of topics we're going to get in here today. And I think where I'd like to start pretty much every show that I do with somebody is really digging into your background, kind of your come up story into the industry, getting into real estate and everything. Can you walk us through what that looked like?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It's a little bit of a cold start, to be honest. A lot of folks, they are brought up in the trades or they're brought up in a development background with either a business degree that turned to real estate for risk mitigation or their family was in it or something like that. But I actually worked in and managed luxury restaurants and high-end restaurants in kind of resort locations long before I ever got my building license. And I'm one of two qualifying agents on the building license. So it's not just my entry that's kind of a cold start, but it's also how we worked our way up is a little interesting. Um, for about 10 years, I started as a busser in a Hispanic restaurant from where I'm from in Western Maryland. And some of my more recent items on the agenda were working restaurants in Telluride, Colorado. And so, as we made our way up the restaurant ladder, if you were, for the quality standard of things. When there's a point when you realize I'm not working in a McDonald's anymore, and then, which there's nothing wrong with that at a certain day, but there's a certain expectation of quality and service, and I felt like I had kind of reached the ladder um, ceiling, if you will. And so, as I looked for a possible shift of career change, I had moved from Colorado to California. And my wife and I spent 2 years there, and then we decided to come to Nashville. And when I came to Nashville, is when I decided to pursue what ended up being somewhere back in my DNA, because my grandfather was a master builder from Maryland and built about 60% of the general motel and hotel or entry level hotel inventory in that area. And so I said, well, let's sit for the test. Let's apply some of our big brain restaurant power and see if it becomes big brain building power. And here we are 5 days, or I'm sorry, 5 years later. And our bread and butter these days is building in Nashville for single family luxury, for investors on a multifamily basis. And then we're working on some outdoor resort stuff too.
Nice. So, what was the trigger that made you actually start Providence Builder Group then? Like what was it that made you say, "Hey, I want to start my own thing here in this industry?" Was it I mean, how did that come to you? How did you make that decision?
So it's pretty interesting, mainly because the response comes from video games, which is not what you would expect. I grew up, the first time I built a computer tower was about six. I remember when they first came out with this new thing called DDR3 memory, and I thought my RAM would never be the same again. Little did I know, because that was like 1997 or something. And so, when I came up on video games, it was almost all real time strategy and building. So I was always building, but I was mainly virtually building. And that compared with my dad's side of the family that almost always put their hands on something and made it theirs, whether it was mechanical or building science or anything like that. I've kind of always thought from a high level, which not only lends itself to how things are done on the building science, but also how things come together on a strategic scale for development. So it's probably something a little bit more in tune to nurture versus nature, but that's just how I've always seen it. And so we wanted to make an impact in the quality and how we were building at the onset. And then we said, well, how do we make large, um, implicative movement and actually make a substantial change? And that takes you from builder to developer.
Gotcha. What were some of the in the early days of starting the company? What were some of the challenges that you had to overcome? As far as nothing really goes as a straight line, right? From here to here,
No.
I mean, it's all over the place. Like, what were some of the challenges you faced that other people might face if they're starting up a company?
So, in my opinion, I had an idea for a book this morning, which I think I'm going to end up writing, and this is helping me form that a little bit. But in my opinion, it's not about the things that I think people will face. It's actually about the things that I know people will face. And we have an office now, but I used to do all of these jobs myself. I used to do every single job. It was always, how do I get the license? AKA, how do I know how to build something? How do I get licensed by the state to say that I know how to build something and I'm not going to just go to a client's house and burn it down because I don't know what I'm doing? Um, how do I set a note up with the bank if I'm building something speculative versus for a client basis? And how do I speak a bank's lingo? Because I think that money is a fantastic tool. It's not the end all be all, but it's a fantastic tool to go where you're going. But I also know that typically everything is in a box at the bank. And if it doesn't fit that box, then they usually don't do it. So learning how to take the messy outside world and putting it in a financial box is a skill in and of itself. Then the bank wants to know if you're going to be able to anchor the debt and if it is risky or not. So you got to go find equity. So now I'm not only asking the bank for money, I'm asking other people for their money. So I'm doing investor relations and acquisitions. And then we're taking our building license and we're building something. So we've done all of this entitlement and permit work, and we've gone and gotten equity, and then we've secured a note with it at the bank. And now we've done this huge job of 4, 5, 6 C-suite people. And then I also have to go build something and sell it. And so the amount of work that has to be done in the 168 hours a week is something where you have all of this time management that if you have no idea what the cervical critical path is, you won't be able to get anything done. And it's literally like zeroing out the noise and learning what do I have to get done to make this work, and then repeating that analytical and performative process across so many different sectors. You could go on and on and on, and I could probably talk the paint off of this wall behind me, but it really, that's one of the biggest skills I think anybody needs to learn is time management, because you can also be the smartest person in the world, but I've also met a lot of smart people that they don't actually perform and do anything. They're just really smart. And that's great, but nothing gets done if you don't do it.
Right. So basically identifying the critical path and understanding the specific things you need to do to hit that, and then
Mhm.
prioritizing those on basically a daily basis without getting distracted by all the other things that can distract you in the business.
Yeah, and folks talk about batching your time, which is so crucial, but we're kind of a little bit back to everything messy in the real world and fitting it in that box at the bank. You're just taking that same mindset and applying it to something else. And in this case, your batching, your work and your analytical batching, that only works if you don't have 1,000 other things that pop up through the day, and you definitely will.
Right.
Um, in March, just to like take it a hair further, in March I did a kind of an analysis over the last 5 years to see exactly how much time I'd put into the company. And in March, since I started the company in June of 2020, or at least the Secretary of State received us as an entity, I put 28,150 hours into Providence. And so if it takes 10,000 hours to master something, by this time, because it's June, I've mastered it almost 3 times. And so you get really, really good through reps and education combined, you get really good at the reps that tell you where your time is most valuable and how to get to where you need to go for that day.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. And I've heard that, the 10,000 hour reference also to mastering something. I'm curious from your standpoint, knowing that you've hit that 10,000 hours almost three times basically, how do you keep yourself in the mindset of continuing to learn though? Of basically saying there's still more to learn, like always be learning basically. How do you keep yourself grounded and make sure that you do that?
I remember so many people telling me, or maybe it's just a couple people that said it a lot. I don't know which one, but I heard it a lot where I was always told that I had rosy colored glasses. And I think every entrepreneur kind of does that when they start out. They see everything through all of this opportunity, and as they go along, they get more informed. Not unlike the Alex Ramosi mindset of the, 5 points of uninformed optimism, and then informed pessimism, and then they're in the valley of despair, and then they have informed optimism, and then they pass the threshold of success. And so it's not unlike that. And I think if you just remember the two things that folks, I feel they take it for granted a lot these days, those two things that we hear a lot, but still ring true for me, because we're by no means experiencing all of the achievement I think we will over the next 20 years. So we still have an upward trajectory to meet. One of them is that you will have a all the obstacles that you can have, you will almost always have them all at once for a short period of time. But success is basically all this work you put in and you experience it at some breaking point. Like you'll work, 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 and then you'll get really like overwhelmed and you'll feel like you're not making any headway. And then at some point, your work will pay off. I watched a podcast from the Modern Craftsman podcast on a builder that I really appreciate everything they put out is NS Builders out of Boston, and they had Brady Fry from Fry Plastic Construction, who's based here in Nashville, on their podcast the other day, and he told a story about how he was bidding some multitude of jobs for such a long time, and he knows one of the lumber shops here in town, and he went up to the guy that owns the lumber shop. It's like, I might have to go do something else. And his advice received was keep going unless you've gotten any outside stimuli to tell you, ooh, this is really not your thing. And it's just about reps, just keep going. And then suddenly he won five $10 million, $8 million house jobs at the same time. And now his issue was not, I can't get jobs. It's how do I perform in these five jobs I just won, right?
Mhm.
And so it usually happens like that. And I've experienced the same thing. I just got off a phone call an hour and a half ago that continues to remind me that all of your cumulative work is not dissimilar to the plumber coming to your house when you have a leak. You don't pay for the 30 minutes he's there, you pay for the 30 years of experience. So he only has to wait, or you only have to wait 30 minutes for him to fix the leak. Um, and and the other thing is really like you'll not get better at anything unless you do the reps. And those reps are constant, they are informative, because when we do any sort of like deal with our investors, or we JV with something on somebody on a particular project, or we're looking to take on a project of our own, whatever it is, whether they're the partner with us on it or whether they are the retail base that's buying our product afterwards, generally they won't be as interested in your product unless you have the reps, because people know that a project will get difficult. And unless you've been through it before, they can't count on you when things do get difficult. And that's really what they look at.
This episode of the Land Development Podcast is brought to you by Groove. Groove helps you look up parcel ownership, view lot lines, and track conversations with landowners, all from one simple map-based platform. Start your free trial at letsgroove.com/signup. That's letsgroov.com/signup. All right, let's get back to the show. You mentioned when you were introing Providence Builder Group briefly a little bit ago, you mentioned the luxury single family. You also mentioned multifamily. A couple of questions on that. So, do you
Mhm.
do are you doing your own development of the land prior to building, or do you partner with other developers when you do those projects?
Both.
Both.
Hmm.
Okay. And how do you decide on a project whether you're going to do the development yourself or if you're going to go and bring in an outside developer to partner with?
So there's a couple things that we like to look for. If we're in a tertiary market, is the basis low enough for us to go the distance on something? We're doing a 72-acre project that is coming up on 3 years now. And we are now in the expected last 6 months of entitlements before we break ground. We're currently entertaining debtors, and we have our subbase lined up, and we've already gone through leadership, and we just have like this one piece at the end. But the land basis was low enough, and the market is we know through countless surveys and multiple sub bases that we definitely have an untapped market here. And it also has, in this particular project, which I'm not trying to be vague about, it's just, you know, um, we know that it has legs because it's done all around the country. We just don't have one here in the state. And so that land basis there has the ability to go the distance with the juice on it, but we also know that we have to sustain sweat equity as we go through the entitlement phases, and we have lawyers' fees and geotechnical analysis and feasibility studies and continual utility feasibility studies, where feasibility is like, are you going to run into a graveyard or an Indian burial mound? But the utilities also want to know how much burden you're putting on their local systems. Like, there's just so many pieces that go along with it. But if we think that generally the building process is going to exceed the entitlement phase, we'll look and see how low the land basis is if we're in a tertiary market, so on and so forth. Or on the flip side of that, if we think it's a 12-month build, then we'll look to possibly, according to if it pencils, look and see if we can subcontract out some of the entitlements or give ourselves a little breathing room through a joint venture that allows for two pockets, but creates a much deeper pocket base that allows us to kind of go the distance on something, even if we have to take out our own back end to get there. And I think there's nothing wrong with partnering ever. I I'm not a person that holds on to equity. I will always want equity, but I don't think that cutting the nose off to spite the face is a really good business model. And I think that folks having this idea that they have to own always 80 or more percent of, like, I don't know, maybe I'm speaking from a non-Blackstone-esque altitude and I just am naive, but I don't believe that all of the pie should remain. I believe that you can do three of something if you partner and your bandwidth grows rather than just holding your one nugget, being the dragon on the top of the gold mound, and being all in your cave of solitude. So if we can turn a 2 year project into a 14-month project by partnering with somebody who has a legal outfit and they can get the entitlements done in 4 months, and we can work on the civils and enact a real efficient cycle on the horizontal and vertical stack, then I'd rather do that and do three or four of those rather than, you know, pigeonhole myself on one deal and then really get unnecessarily worked up over how much we take home at the end of the day.
Nice. Well, I do want to dig into some of your projects here in just a little bit.
Mhm.
I'm curious about, we haven't talked to anybody on the podcast before about from the Nashville area. What's the Nashville housing market like these days?
Expansive and deficient. So we have a lot of luxury product. Um, it's currently being checked by the disparity between buyers and sellers nationwide. It's about 500,000 more sellers than buyers, and so in Nashville, it's way more insulated than some of the experiences folks have been having around the country. But it is um, very real still, and so I think the place that we see it with the most is you can't build a piece of junk and expect to extract gold from it. That doesn't fly anymore. The amount of real estate agents absolutely boomed in Nashville over the last 5 years, and I think they're all being checked as to what the actual market looks like. Money's not free anymore. People actually have to create a game plan, be professional, also be professional in their overcoming of adversity rather than just throwing something and seeing what sticks at the wall. But when I say deficient, we've had three separate studies come out, one of them being particularly backed by Nashville leadership that say that we're 90,000 units residentially short.
Mm.
And so that will be a requirement between here and 2034, I think. And then we've had another study that says the same thing, but the number of deficit is 250,000. So I think somewhere in the middle is probably the truth. But you have a lot of folks who can't afford their homes anymore. And so that's where the multifamily comes in. And when we partner with an investor to create that bandwidth and really enact that good to the community, it's based on those homes that folks thought that they were going to get, but they don't realize that Nashville is kind of, I honestly, I would say that Nash Vegas, which is a term that brings all of the tourist folks to Second Avenue and Broadway, is probably true. I was about to call it the Miami of Tennessee, but I don't think that's accurate. But it's definitely absolutely blossomed, and it's way different from even 5 years ago. And everything's going to grow. It's just about how manageably sustained it is.
Yeah, I'm curious on the luxury side, luxury home side. When people come to you looking for you to do a build for them,
Mhm.
um, do they primarily come to you with a specific plan or concept of the home in mind first, or do they come to you with a location in mind first? Like, where do they usually start? Is it location or is it
It's
home?
actually neither. Interesting.
Okay.
Um, Folks usually look at us like a hedge fund on steroids or a mutual fund, probably on steroids. We have a backlog of master list deals that we constantly analyze and create this off market network of feeder systems that give us deals and wholesalers and agents and, you know, for sale by owners and mailers and just like the whole nine. And so we have a backlog of militaristically categorized and standardized yeses and nos on the list that we offer to clients, and the investors will actually come to us and they'll be like, well, I saw the house that you did on 713 South 12th Street. I'd like something that's close to that. I also have 150K. What can we do with that? So we either place it in something that we get their approval on, but we've already vetted, or we syndicate with them with somebody else with 150 grand. Because usually, based on our LTC requirements with our bank connections we have right now, will be anywhere between 80 and 90 LTC, and anywhere between 7 and 11% if you go traditional or hard money. And so the folks kind of trust our track record to be able to place their money and then give them back a profit share. And again, it's kind of unheard of, but we make sure that it pencils, but it is unheard of. And I say that twice because we usually JV and split the profits Dutch with the client on the back end and we do all the work. But it's again, I think that folks are finally realizing that in this buyer's market, they're going to get exactly what they think they should pay for. Now, everybody still wants free money, and they've been used to a very good lifestyle from the Fed over the last 15 years, and that's not the case anymore either. So the buyers need to kind of shake the cobwebs out just a little bit. But it is probably the best deal in Nashville you'll find. And it's based on the fact that we come in here and we grind every day and we make sure that what we are presenting to our investors is like we can stand on it.
I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier that I'm interested in. So, when we were talking about really your growth as a company, and you had mentioned, we have so much more. We're going to continue to grow and expand over the next 20 plus years. What are those aspirations? Like, where do you see yourself in 20 years, or what do you want to become? Are you talking like like regional, multi, like where do you want to spread wide? Are you trying to go really deep in the current market? Like, what do you hope to accomplish?
I want to caveat this by saying that I feel like folks that go deep in the market become experts in the market. And I can do 30,000 hours, but it doesn't mean that every single person in this company is expected to do that. I think that one of those, shaking the cobwebs off as owners, remembering that not everybody's going to work as hard as you. So if you're going to commit, commit. And nobody can be expected to pick up phone calls at 8 p.m. Though I myself sometimes make those phone calls and I usually don't get a response, which reminds me of my own mantra. But that being said, regardless of the requirement of the grind and the entrepreneur's life in this day and age, um, my business partner says this often to folks. There's a development company here in town called Southern Land Company, and we see ourselves as Southern Land Company 2.0. We are taking AI and putting it into our company's daily mindset and not taking away any one person's job, but empowering that job through AI and making sure that they know that they have analytical power, organizational power, ability to communicate, even in some overwhelming situations where their phone's going off the hook or they're getting every email or they have to get these deliverables back to this person by end of day, but they also have this over here. And so the idea is to create a technological structure of support around them and enable them to do their job in the best way they can so that they can still go home, have a work-life balance, see their families. But we are getting into um, the outdoor luxury motor coach space. So we're building the first luxury motor coach resort in the state of Tennessee. It is called LSV, stands for Lockers Southern View. It is going to be a 22 to 25-minute drive west of the center of Nashville along the Cumberland River. It has half a mile of riverfront view directly on the Cumberland River. The frontage is accompanied by an 8,500 square foot clubhouse, a 2,500 square foot secondary adult clubhouse. It's a little bit more private. It has an amphitheater. It has a restaurant in it, and it has 260 luxury motor coach lots. You can buy one, bring your Class A or Super C luxury motor coach in, usually Newell or Prevost or one of the big builders is what you typically see. And then there are 12 cabins so that if your family wants to come and enjoy, they can enjoy the rental cabins that we'll have on the resort. And when you're not there, you can bring it back to the HOA and do a 70-30 split in the rental program. And there is nothing like this in the state of Tennessee, and Nashville itself, being so interconnected through all the highways, is about 2,500 lots short. So this is a big sector that's untapped. Most of these resorts are in Florida, Colorado, on the Ozarks, but this is going to be the first one of its kind, and we're really excited to bring it to Tennessee. That also includes an adjacent master plan community. And we are going to Florida and building 101 build to rent townhomes with another building partner of ours to service the workforce out of the 30A area on the beach. So, what we want to see in the next 20 years is one really big thing centered around a lot of growth. And the growth comes from single family luxury infill and keeping our day to day investors and clients happy. It is inclusive of bringing multifamily also with our investors to Nashville's inventory issue that we've been seeing so that we can alleviate folks that want affordable housing. And then these outdoor and master plan communities and resort opportunities all feeding together to say that our company bringing this basically conglomerate of Southern values to anybody, not just in the South, that value Southern values, have the ability to reconnect with their community, have the ability to afford a home in whatever shape or form the new American dream looks like. I don't believe it's dead. I just think it's evolved. And something that is standing on authenticity that goes the distance. It's very important these days, wherein you just see everybody on Wall Street looking to turn a dollar over or recycle a fund or something like that. Making a difference means impacting, and it's not just impacting in a negative way because you wanted to come and fill your coffers. It's really about giving back, and it's about giving back sustainably because we can be a successful company even if money is not priority number one. We have a fiduciary responsibility to our partners and investors. So it's definitely top three, but doing well will always feed you back the returns that you give out to somebody else. And if you don't feed this cyclical benevolence, you're not going to get anything back.
Yeah, before we go to the final segment of the show, I do want to dig into that LSV project a little bit more. What's your timeline of that project look like?
So we are looking at, we have about 3 months now. We're in our final stages of getting through the Army Corps, which has been very fun. They have, in the last, I believe it's either 8 or 10 years, changed the laws on jurisdictional and jurisdictionally adjacent waterway areas and wetland areas about, I think it's 11 or 15 times. And so there's this constant moving target about basically telling the Army Corps, hey, you, I'm sure, have a way of doing your job, but it is overreaching exceptionally. We also don't want to just use up all the resources and take away from the natural resources that Tennessee offers, but you're putting your fingers in a lot of pots where it doesn't quite belong. And we're at page 720 of the Army Corps permit, and we expect to be at about page 900 when we're done. And
Wow.
so it has been a long, long time. But as soon as the Army Corps piece is alleviated, we will break ground.
Well, that's a cool project. I definitely one that I want to stay in touch with and see how that turns
Yeah.
out and kind of how it goes
You
along.
mind if I do a little plug here?
Yeah, for sure. Go for it.
The HTML is lsvmotorcoachresort.com.
Perfect. Yeah, and I will all links and everything that are mentioned in this, they'll be in the show notes page. So if you didn't
Perfect.
quite get that and you're driving right now, just go to the link in the description and that'll take you to the show notes page and there'll be a link to that site there. Um, well, I would like to, we're at about just over 30 minutes. So I'd like to jump into the last segment, which is the lightning round, where I have a few questions for you related to your experiences and everything like that. Um, Interested to get your thoughts. So the first one is more from your perspective as a builder, and
Mhm.
maybe giving some advice for developers out there. But from a builder's perspective, what's something you wish developers would keep in mind when planning their next development?
There is only so much educational risk adverse mentality that you can bring to mitigate risk. You can do a lot, and any builder that won't do their part is not the builder for you. But you will never know every little piece, and that 10% contingency is crucial because we build in the real world and things will shift.
All right, next one. What do you think makes someone a good leader in a business?
Empathy. I think that you're not going to be able to start anything off the ground without intelligence, but I think empathy is what keeps you going for the long haul. You will always be selling as a business owner, and more than what you expect is selling inwards so that folks can see what you're about and what your overall mindset and mantra is, what your goals are. They get to know as you as much as you get to know them.
All right, third one. What's a common thing that consumers overlook when they're considering a new home?
Anything they can't see.
Hmm.
So we do on our page, Providence Builder Group on Instagram. I try to put as much social media content out there so that through the build, we can walk them through an educational process as to why our homes are better than somebody else's. And there's a lot of really great builders out there. I'm not dogging any of those, but we build to and exceed the building code because I think the building code is kind of a minimum that should be surpassed. And it's really important that what you cannot see is just as important to the home as what you can.
All right, fourth one. What advice would you give to someone who is thinking about starting their own home building or development business? Maybe branching out.
If you're starting your own home build, is it home building or development?
Hey, I threw them both out there, so
Okay,
whichever one you want to take.
okay. Well, I'll tackle both because there's some overlying mentality there. Home building, know your stuff. The only thing that happens in home building, it gets done through knowledge, and then after that, knowledge plus experience. So if you're not doing anything, folks won't look. I mean, look at any builder. The first place you go to is the homepage, and the second place you go to is what projects have you completed. That is it. right? On development side, it's a little similar, but developments are kind of just a lot of finance bros that really wanted to go to real estate instead of Wall Street. And so when you're in development, you also have to know your stuff, but it's a function of all the algebra you didn't want to take in high school because really there's a lot of hard and fast rules on money. Even if money nowadays is a digital transaction and you can't actually hold it, it's very real when you go to do the pro forma on a deal because you need to know your stuff. And so I guess the overlying mentality between them is know your stuff.
Yeah. Cool. All right, last one here. If you could do anything differently in your career up to this point, what would you change and why?
I would not continue to attempt to partner with those who don't want to. It has always been a mindset and a reminder of mine that if you want to go fast, go solo. If you want to go far, go together. And the reverse of that is that there's a lot of folks that will tell you who they are the first time. And as an entrepreneur, you end up like you make stuff work and you put your head down and you grind and you push on through. That doesn't work when you want to see if somebody else wants to be the other oxen in the yoke to pull the cart with you. You have to really have an alignment and think it through and chat with the person if you want to partner with them because there's a lot of folks that ends up being what's that book of Mice and Men where Lenny like
Yeah.
crushes the animal or whatever. It ends up being a whole lot like that, and it is an open your hand and let the butterfly leave it where it wants to, and if it doesn't, then you have something. So that's what I would change for sure.
All right. Well, Will, what's the best way for people to connect with you, learn more about you, but also learn more about your company?
The best way to connect with me, and I will give all of the information here, is there is a submission form on providencebuildergroup.com that you can send a submission to us. We will receive it and reach right back out to you. My phone number, and I don't know if you'll link this anywhere, but it's
Yeah.
615-913-0159. And then my email is william@providencebuildergroup.com. And we primarily do investor and speculative build, but we also do customs. And I think it's really important that we start giving the world on both sides of building the quality it really deserves.
Awesome. Well, Will, I really appreciate this. Super interesting. A lot of topics that we haven't gone into before on the show. And so that was good to dig into. And for everybody listening in right now, like I said earlier, the links and everything that Will was just talking about there are on the show notes page, which you'll find in the description for this episode. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. And we will talk to you all next week.